Hi, I'm Lowell Joseph Gallen, and our guest today is Mr. Barry Kramer, who is visiting Israel from the state of Utah. Mr. Kramer is a chemical engineer, and we are going to talk about what he did when he was a boy in high school. He ran a small dairy farm, and in those days you could have a small farm of 15 cows and 40 acres and live. And when I heard this story from Mr. Kramer, I was amazed because it's in America that I don't think exists anymore, and in many ways is very attractive. So Mr. Kramer is going to tell us a little bit about his world, how he grew up. Mr. Kramer.
Okay, well, I grew up in western Washington, in the state of Washington, in the very northwest county of the state of Washington, pretty close to the Canadian border and pretty close to the ocean. It was a pretty good dairy farming area, and if you looked around the world, you'd look at, say, Holland, Germany, and so on, you would see that it had a very similar climate. So it attracted people from Germany, Holland, and so on that were dairymen in the old country. My dad moved up there in about 1938 after getting out of the Marine Corps. We lived in a little one-room cabin up there for a while, and probably around 1938 or probably 1939, he bought a 20-acre farm for $2,000, and we settled into that, and we're making a living. So it was a fairly, as far as I'm concerned, it was a very simple life. We lived where there was a river, the North Fork of the Nooksack and the Middle Fork of the Nooksack came together right below us, and some streams. And as a kid, I did a lot of fishing and helped with the chores. My dad, though, was a visionary, and he wanted me to go to college. And so he envisioned how that could happen, and the way it could happen was that if I would take over the farm and he would get another job, that would work out so that I could gradually earn enough money and buy the cows from him and then sell those cows when I got out of high school. So it was during my freshman year that he asked me if I would like to do that, and I said that I would. So
Your freshman year in high school, when you were 13.
Probably 14.
14 you took over the farm.
Yes, something like that. And my sister helped out, but she was 3.5 years younger.
Okay.
But she fed calves and did things like that she really liked to do. We were all set up with a fairly nice facility. My dad had also, as time went by, had picked up another 15 acres next door, so we had 35, I think we had 40 acres total, and some of it was wooded. This is a place where it rains quite a bit and the grass grows pretty well, so you can take care of a lot of cattle on a small acreage. We didn't have to irrigate, so we had about 15 milk cows. They weren't always giving milk at the same time. Sometimes, you know, they would be going to have a calf, and they had to have a calf to come fresh, we called it, and that's when they would start giving milk in abundance, and then you would milk them for about 9 months, and then the cycle would begin all over again. So it wasn't fully milking 15 cows, but we probably had about 22 head. Some were young heifers, and so the idea was you had to get up every morning at about 4:45 and milk the cows. Used to get up and make a little cup of hot tea and then head for the barn and milk the cows. We had a milking parlor, so we bring them in at 5 at a time. And
what's a milking parlor?
A milking parlor is a little building that has stanchions in it where the cows put their heads in to eat their grain, and then you shut the stanchion on them, and they have to stand there while you milk them.
So I want to add a footnote here. After I finished my senior year at Swarthmore College in 1978, I came to Israel for the year, and I wanted to see if I wanted to live on a kibbutz. I lived on a kibbutz for 4 months. It was wonderful, but I decided I didn't want to live on a kibbutz. While I was there, they had cows. Their primary product was carrots, and I asked if I could work with the cows, and they said, okay. After a while, they said, we don't really think cows are for you. We see you love the cows, but you're too slow. So they sent me back to carrots. And they were wonderful to work with, but I was too slow. That was my experience with cows. Then once on that year, I think, I went on a visit to the Golan Heights, and I went to a kibbutz, and they had cows, and they were very proud to tell me that they had taken the Danish Holstein cow, and they claimed made a better cow. They upgraded it like Israel did with the M16 and American jets. A little friendly competition that they were very proud of that. You had a milking parlor. What is a milking parlor, Mr. Kramer?
Like you said, it's a place that will hold 5 cows. They know that they're going to get their grain, so they go up and put their head through what we call the stanchion, and then you close that on their neck, and then they stood there and ate their grain while you milked them. And we had a milking machine. In fact, there was 2 milking machines, and so we just put the milking machines on the cows, and that was a lot better than trying to milk them by hand. So after they were milked, then of course I had to throw down hay and had to throw down silage for them to eat. In the wintertime, they stayed in what we call the lounge, which was 2-sided, and half of them in one side, half of them in the other. We had alfalfa hay, and we had some hay that we made on the farm. We bought alfalfa hay off the farm. And we made silage every year and filled the silo too. So I had to throw that down and do all that, and then wash the milk things, and then go to school, and then come home and then do it again. And
You did this every morning before you went to school?
And every night after I got back from school.
Was this a 7-day-a-week job?
7 days a week.
Because cows don't take off for the Sabbath, Christian, Jewish, or otherwise. It's
No.
full-time job.
If you want to celebrate, like go out on a date or something like that, you have to take it out of your sleeping hours.
We have 3 dogs, which people, when they left Jerusalem one by one, they knew where to go, and we wouldn't say no. So we have 3 little dogs, and when you're going to go away for the day, you can't leave them in the house. You have to. What are you going to do with them? You're going to take them with you? And dogs are much smaller than cows, and
Right.
our dogs are very small dogs. What kind of cows did you have?
These were, we had a couple of jerseys and a couple of guernseys. I thought it might be interesting for you to know that there was one Guernsey that we called Betty. She was kind of our favorite cow, and she was a beautiful animal. But when she came fresh, she gave a lot of milk for a Guernsey. And so she gave about between 60 and 70 pounds of milk a day.
A day?
A day. So if you convert that into gallons, you see a pint's a pound the world around, a quart's 2, a gallon's 8 pounds. So 60 pounds is, you're getting upwards of around 8 gallons of milk a day. We could really get the milk out of her, especially when she came fresh in the spring. That means she had a calf. We'd cut grass and just haul it in to the cows and just feed them so they didn't have to go out. And so the easier they had it and the more grass they got, green grass, the more milk they gave. So that was our best cow. I could say that Jerseys are a little temperamental, and Guernseys have a better disposition. And at that time, everybody was starting to move towards Holsteins. which seemed to have milk. They gave more milk. It wasn't quite as rich in butter fat, and it was easier to digest. So Holsteins took over, but at my time, it was primarily Guernseys, I would say.
My wife's family had a small farm, and they had cows, and I remember visiting, and my father-in-law would be up, like you said, at 4 in the morning, around then, and he would milk the cow, one cow that they had downstairs in the stall, but they had more, and he would come up with a pail of fresh milk with a cream right at the top. And that's wonderful if you've ever had a opportunity. Devonshire cream in southern England, you want to know what real cream's like? It comes right up from the cow. That's wonderful. And what did you do with all the milk from, what was her name? The cow that gave someone 80?
That was Betty.
Betty. How long could you store it before you couldn't sell it anymore?
In the earlier part, we put it in milk cans and shipped it every day. And then later on, we upgraded to what was called Grade A milk. Before that, the milk was probably used to make cheese and things like that, but the Grade A milk was used for drinking.
At that point, were farmers already pasteurizing and homogenizing milk? Or did that come along, well, Pasteur in France, that you would have had pasteurization already from Pasteur, I suppose.
That wasn't done at our place.
Oh.
We shipped it raw, except my mother did pasteurize the milk we drank. But we just shipped it to the dairy, and the dairy pasteurized it and processed it.
Do you think it's necessary to pasteurize and homogenize milk? I know in the health food store where my parents lived in New York, you can get unpasteurized and unhomogenized milk. Is that dangerous?
Of course, I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but in those days, the fear was that people would get undulant fever. And undulant fever affected your heart, and so it was hard on anyone that got it. I don't know that they ever really got rid of it, and so it was a byproduct of Bang's disease. Bang's disease, they all started testing for Bang's disease, and so they eliminated cows that did have Bangs and really eradicated it. But the fear of whatever it was, undulant fever and whatever else it could have been, never did really go away. So pasteurization continued on. However, some people came and got our milk and would drink it raw. And I think that other people that had a single cow, they would just milk it and drink their milk raw. And in my opinion, it's much better for you. You just have to avoid and be careful of the diseases.
You mentioned that you had your farm near a river, and I get the impression that neighbors were not too close. My father, who loved stories from the frontier America, told me that he read that a real pioneer would get nervous in the frontier. A real frontiersman would get nervous if he could see the smoke from his neighbor's cabin. Then people were getting too close and he felt too closed in. How far was the nearest neighbor from you?
Oh, the nearest neighbor would have been close, at least half a mile. So that's not quite as distant, I think, as you're thinking of in the Old West. But this was a productive land, and people were a little bit more closely grouped and had 40-acre or 60 or 80-acre farms maybe. But yeah, we were a little closer than you're thinking of in the Old West.
This is early 19th century Mark Twain story territory from the old frontier. I didn't expect it would really be like that. So you could see the smoke from your neighbor's chimneys.
Oh yeah, that was Guy Gates over there. And he had some cows too, about the same number. Let's see what else I can tell you.
You mentioned you had been a member of an association, and you were a very young member because you had a working farm from the age of 14 till 18 before you went to college, and you were able to finance your education this way. What was the association that you had been a member of?
This was the Future Farmers of America, known as the FFA. And we had a really good ag teacher.
Were you one of the youngest members?
Well,
How
in
early
the
did
beginning
they
I
start?
was until I was one of the oldest.
Okay, so I see.
But yeah, really thanks to my father's foresight, which I appreciate very much. I actually had the largest dairy project in the state of Washington for an FFA student. And so, I think it was 1952, I was awarded the State Star Dairy Farmer Award.
At what age?
Oh, that would be 16 or so. Yeah. And I'd never been anywhere, so we went over the Cascade Mountains to eastern Washington to Washington State University and had that conference and got that award. So
When you were growing up on a farm, did you ever feel bored that you didn't know what to do, or you always had something to do and something to play with? This concept of boredom, I get the impression, is more common among people who live in cities than people who live in the country, who are used to, children are used to being busy and finding things to play with from nature. Is that a romanticized view of someone who grew up in the suburbs, or is that the way it really was?
well, there wasn't really time to be bored. I mean, if you have school and you have a farm to run, I don't think there's any time for that. I could also say that one of the advantages of doing that was it was a business. And so in the ag class, we had a little blue book, I remember, and we kept track of every expenditure and every income. We had one column called credits and one column called debits. So as students, whatever your project was, we were in business, and we kept track of whether we were spending more money than we were bringing in, or if we were making a profit, and talked about what we needed to do maybe to increase profits.
So the project that your father had for you succeeded then. You were able to earn enough money to go to college, and when you did go to college, what happened to your farm that you had taken over from your father and built up?
Well, the first thing that happened was by the time I graduated, I had bought all the cows from my dad, so we sold the herd. So my sister was still there, and so they lived on the farm. And my dad then, by this time, was the field man for the Dairy Gold, and the Dairy Gold was the company that picked up the milk. And so he went around and visited all of the grade A shippers and forget what the name of the other group was, but he visited all the shippers, and if they had some kind of a problem with bacteria or something like that, measurements when their milk came into the dairy, then he would go out and help them figure out how to eliminate that problem. And he also went out to sign up new shippers, and so he was involved with all of the farmers in the county. And then they continued to live on the farm for quite some time, and my sister stayed there and raised some calves and had a horse and so on.
Before we conclude, I'd like to ask you, today, we're almost in the year, according to the Gregorian calendar, 2013. According to the Hebrew calendar, it's 5773, from last September till next September. So next week, it's 2013, according to the Gregorian calendar. Today, would it be possible for someone in America to open a farm with 50 acres and 15 cows and live from it. Is that possible anywhere in America anymore today?
I don't think so, especially if you didn't have the money to buy the farm. Maybe if you owned the farm and you wanted to grow a great big garden and so on, but I think it would be pretty hard because the size of dairy farms really started increasing around the time I graduated from high school, and I don't know how big they are now. I've been on some farms that were 1,500 milk cows and 2,000 milk cows, and I really lost track. It's just a big process now. They hire milkers, and it's just a great big business. But before that, it was a family thing. We could all live on there, and we could all work together. So it was really nice, I think. It was a good life.
Mr. Kramer, thank you very much for being our guest today, and thanks to all of you for watching and listening.